So hi everyone, welcome to our first session on CHCMHS007. So this is the first of 3 sessions that we're going to do on this particular unit. We'll be going into breakout rooms tonight. We will, in those breakout rooms, we will discuss questions that you will be asked in your assessment, so they're quite relevant. So listen and write down what is discussed in those rooms, because they can be invaluable for you when you come across that question. We record so that people that can't attend tonight can actually attend at any other time, or if you want to re-look at these slides, you can in your own time. And within the slides that we have, and you can watch these Zoom sessions as well, in the slides that we present, there's also resources and training videos that I want you to go in and have a look at. They will give you the information that you need to really respond to your questions with insight. At the end, I'm going to, about the 8:30 mark, we'll do some questions and answers, and then I'm going to speak to the new people. I will do from 5:30 till 6 at each session. If you wanted to come at that 5:30, I will do an induction for new people. I'll just let Amber in. So for any new students, we'll do that induction earlier before our main session. All right, so this is another heavy mental health unit. I want you to be very self-aware. If you have any triggers or you respond in an adverse way to some of the things that we discuss. I dare say just about everybody in this room has been affected or know of someone that has been affected by domestic violence. So it's not something that, oh, only a few of us have been affected. It's very widespread. All right. So any questions before we start?
How heavy are we talking?
Sorry, Amy?
How heavy is the topic?
It's reasonably heavy, but we're looking at this section, we're looking at trauma, what it is, what it looks like. So there's nothing that we need to discuss that would make us feel uncomfortable. And in the breakout rooms, we don't need to share, we just need to talk about. So we don't need to share any of our experiences, though life experience is an amazing thing. But it's more about, let's answer that question as best we know how, without divulging how we know those answers. So yeah, it shouldn't be as heavy to make you go, oh, I am triggered, I can't do this anymore, but everybody's different. So just be aware of that. Yeah, so we will have a little bit of an overview of this unit. So there is the written sections, and if you've done units before, you will understand the written questions. In 007, there is case studies, and there is role plays. Now, new students, find yourself people to do your role plays with if you possibly can, because that makes it always easy for you, and you can do it in your own time. If you can't, trainers can do role plays with you. Some of the role plays need a lot of people, so that makes it a little bit more tricky. But I think these role plays, you've got 3 people that you need to talk about and complete individual care plans for. So they're right at the end, and all the information that you need, you will have answered as you go through the unit. So we'll look at more of those also later in our program, but I did want to touch on those with you, because sometimes the role plays can be a little bit overwhelming, and we leave them too long before we do them, and then we sort of get some of that information that we need out of it. So we will do that a little bit later. Now, nobody is coming in. Very good. Now, I've got a couple of things in the chat that I'm just going to ready. Yeah, that's no problem, Sky. Yeah, thanks, Lachlan. That's lovely. All right, okay. They've sort of told us not to do too much on chat. I think there must have been a lot of sharing going on, and it's been a little bit shunned against at the moment. But no, that's good. I like it for you to let me know what's going on with you, so that's cool. And as I said, these are recorded, so you can go back and see them at any time. All right, so I am going to share my screen with you. We're going to have a look at our, and I'm going to gently move you over. All right, so when you do role plays or you send an email to LSO to ask about a question, the most important thing is your name. But the second most important thing is CHCMHS007 if that's the unit that you want to discuss with them. You can write down, oh, work effectively in a trauma-informed care, but that doesn't make it easy for them to find what that unit is. So always use your unit number, CHCMHS007, when you are corresponding with the support people. And make sure that you say who you are, what that unit is, which section of the unit you're looking at to get help with. So it might be the case studies, might be question 5 in the case studies, or whatever it may be, just to let them know before they even respond to you, they've probably found out what you need to know. So it makes it a lot quicker and faster, and it flows a lot better. So make sure that you use them. Now, I did say if someone was willing to do the acknowledgement of country for us, have I got a taker for that?
Yeah, I'll go again.
Good on you, Lachlan. Well done. Thank you.
In the spirit of reconciliation, Haiti Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, are sorry for the personal, spiritual, and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to the First Nation people and acknowledge elders past and emerging.
Yep, and the present ones. Well done. Good work. And that's excellent. I'm just going to admit Christine in. Good work. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to have a look at what we call the housekeeping. And I'll just let some more people in. Joining and okay. Oh, and another one. All right. Okay. So if we have a look, they ask for your cameras to remain on, but there's sometimes that we need to do something, or we're doing something, or the kids comes in and rugby tackles you, or the dog comes in and licks your face, and you might want to just take your camera off for a short time, and that's perfectly okay. If you speak, I really like to see your face when you do that. So if you've got a question or anything like that, please do that. That's it's respectful to have that camera on. Bit of Zoom etiquette. All right. So remember that, but you don't have to have it on all the time. If I didn't have to, I wouldn't. All right. So your microphone's on mute, just so we don't get all your background noise. All right. And if that is the case, I may have to mute you from my end. Class breaks. We do class breaks because sometimes we can get very tired from everything that happens to us, and it can be we're just not breathing enough, and we're breathing really slowly, and the next thing our body is shutting down. So what we need to do there is I try to make it on the times, but 7 to 7:10 or whatever your time is when I say it's break time, it will be 10 minutes. So we do 2 of those. So depending on where you are, that's Brisbane time that's there. we love to hear from you, and we like you to participate. I really like you to participate in the breakout rooms, because that's when you can get the most learning and sort of unexpected learning. Well, we didn't know that, but you've just learned it from someone else. So it's your peer learning is invaluable, and you do that in a workplace constantly. So it needs to happen within the training realm as well. So respectful relationships basically means be mindful with your words and how our words can tear people apart without even knowing that you've done that. So our language needs to be respectful. Be very careful with your language, especially when you're dealing with young people. You need to keep your language and your emotional intelligence under control with that. So we don't want you to smoke or vape. So we go, if you're going to do that, please turn off your camera, because we don't want to see you do that. And other people will get jealous if they wanted to. So we encourage you not to. Now, with some of our units, we talk about things that can have a bit of a vagal response in your nervous system. So understand that what your body changes are when you become triggered by something that we might be talking about or we're referencing. So be aware of that. Be kind to yourself. Make sure that that if you need to move away, you move away. That's why I always say take the breaks when we have the breaks, because you need to move away. You need to move your body. You can't sit in front of a computer for a long time and not be able to or still be able to retain the information that you need. Now, you understand that with your study, all right? So be kind for yourself. We are big on what are you doing for self-care? You might be students, and you might be working students, and you might have a family. So what do you do for yourself? And so we're very much into all the different domains of you, your physical, your emotional, your social, etc. What do you do in those spaces for self-care? So I have a think about that and what you could do to improve those things. Because if you just work, study, everything's, the demands on me are far too much, I'm feeling overwhelmed, then you're not taking time out for self-care. So when that happens in the workplace, we call it burnout. And it can happen just in your normal everyday lives. We can have burnout in different sections of our lives. And this is what happens to our young people as well. So we need to be aware of that and to be kind to yourselves. So referral and document resources. And if you've never heard of a referral before, it's when we want to help one of our clients be able to connect with a different service that provides things that we can't for them. So if our service did not do counselling, we might need to refer that client to a counsellor. And who would be the best one for them? Do they prefer a gender in that? Where do they live? Do they have transport? So there's lots of things around that. Has the client consented to that referral? Or are we just sending them in blind? Have we got that consent in writing? Can't send them if we don't. And there's other document resources that we use. So by the end of the session, this particular one, you will know what trauma and complex trauma is. You will know about some of the trauma statistics, and they're old, because that's how statistics run. It's after the fact. Oh, and I'm going to do something about that. Oh, we should have done that 5 years ago. What causes trauma? The impacts on development, so how that affects young people, babies, children, young children. Relationship and interpersonal violence on trauma, and coping mechanisms that can sometimes be bad coping mechanisms. Others can be good. So there's good and bad coping mechanisms, and keeping those boundaries in a good shape is is very important. All right, so understanding trauma. This is a video that I would like you to watch. It's a YouTube video, and it gives you a good aspect on what trauma looks like. I'll just let somebody in. All right, so I want you to have a look at that. It only goes for two minutes and 21 seconds, and it's well worth you having a look at. All right, very important that you look at these resources, because sometimes in 2 minutes you can get exactly what you need to know. All right, and that's, to me, that's it's fast learning, but it also can be deep learning. So watch those. They're embedded in the PowerPoints, and you've got the PowerPoints in your resources. So what is trauma? So according to the American Psychological Association, now if you have not looked that up, in these, there is a link, and you can follow that link and it will take you to it. The information that you can get from that link is invaluable. So what is trauma? Well, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. It could be an accident or a natural disaster. But have a look at the American Psychological Association. It is an amazing document. I bought it, and I also had to buy the little another little handout that's like in brief, because it goes into so much detail. But it is such a wealth of knowledge. It really is. I really like it. So a person may experience trauma as a response to any event they find physically or emotionally threatening or harmful. You know, if you're scared for your life, you are in a trauma response because you are scared for your life. And different things happen to us. Some of you won't have seen some of the other units that I've talked about, where we go into freeze, fight, flight, where our nervous system just takes over and we react in a certain way. So it's very, very important that we make sure that we understand what is happening to us when we're in trauma. Because if you're dealing with a young person and something has triggered them, and they're having a trauma response, their behavior is really angry and confused at the moment, you need to know, so you can pick up on that and then put in strategies in place to support that young person through that. Now, there might be times where you can't understand their trauma and they don't tell you. So it makes it harder to know what is actually happening to them. But very important, right? Nobody else needs to come in. Okay, good. Any questions so far? Yeah, and I go, when you're working with youth, that American Psychological Association booklet is an absolute must to understand the different types of mental health that we can experience as humans. All right, very, very important. So remember that a person may experience trauma as a response to any event they find physically or emotionally threatening or harmful. And that will be different for different people. Let's break down trauma again then. The types of trauma that you can experience. So it can be acute. Trauma can be acute, resulting from a single event such as an assault. And that trauma response from that assault may stay with us for a long time, may never leave us. And then you've got chronic trauma. So chronic results from repeated exposure to traumatic events, as in the case of ongoing abuse. It's chronic. It is ongoing. and you're exposed to it all the time. You can't seem to get away from it. This is what happens to a lot of children. Now, complex trauma. Complex trauma results from a multitude of traumatic events. So it is multiple. It's not a single event. It is multiple. All right. Okay, I'm going to put it to the room. What might cause trauma? What might cause trauma? And as soon as you think of something, just hit your little mute button and just say it.
Car accident.
Car accident, absolutely. Good work. Good work. Can stop
Loss
us from.
Loss of a
Sorry,
family member.
Mun, could you say that again?
Loss of a family member, death in a family.
Absolutely, absolutely. That can put us in mourning for years. Yeah. What else can cause
Assault.
trauma?
An
Assault.
assault.
Yes, absolutely. It can, Dwayne. An assault can.
Sexual
Yep.
assault.
Sexual assault, absolutely.
Use DV.
DV, absolutely. Thanks,
Being
Rochelle.
Being bullied.
Absolutely. And being bullied anywhere, doesn't matter where you're bullied, being bullied has a huge effect on our emotions and how we cope. So it can be at work, it can be at school, it can be at home, it can be your brothers and sisters. So yes, that was a good one. Excellent.
Suicide.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Suicide.
Absolutely. The ripple effect from suicide is enormous, Good work.
Eating disorders like anorexia.
Yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. But come from that, sometimes you've got to come back to why.
Yeah.
Why is that happening? Yeah. Oh, I'll just admit Emma. Yeah, very good. All right. Can anybody think of anything else that can
Relationship.
cause? Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They can.
I think also like witnessing something traumatic can have an effect on you.
Good
So
work.
if whether it's a car accident or a big traumatic event happen, it can have an effect on the witnesses.
Absolutely, Amy, it sure can. Kids witnessing a bus crash the other day in Bundaberg. All of them were traumatized.
Corporal punishment.
Sorry, Sky?
Corporal punishments.
Corporal punishments. Absolutely, absolutely. They can. Yeah, when people are hanged for their crimes or electrocuted for their crimes, it can be harrowing.
Neglect is a big one.
The what, sorry, Mum?
Neglect, like child
Yes.
neglect, abuse,
Yes.
those sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, even neglected in the workplace.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. It can cause us what we call trauma. And we can have trauma responses from that. Now, some of
Ripple
these things that
effect.
you've...
Sorry. Ripple effect from parents' bad coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, they're supposed to be our mentors and sometimes they let us down badly.
Or for
Yeah.
children, the breakdown of their parents' marriage or witnessing DV in the home.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the breakdown of a relationship is traumatic. Depends on who broke it up, of course, I suppose. But yeah, especially when it's a long-term relationship. It can be very traumatic. What about what do we class as trauma? Not getting your assignments in on time. Oh, that's traumatic. But is it?
Role plays.
Sorry, Sky.
I have trauma from role plays some weeks.
Absolutely. I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. Yes, you can be traumatized from many different things, and everybody's trauma is that little bit different, isn't it? Okay. What you guys might, or one of you might think as, oh, really traumatic event and I can't handle it. We might go, oh, no, nothing wrong with that. Yep, no, we can work over that, work through it. You do this and this and get over that. So it just depends on what we're like as human beings and how resilient we have been made. And as we've grown up, who has led that example of resilience for us? And if there was none, where did you find that as a child? A lot of the children that you'll be working with will be looking up to you to model, you know, oh, look how well you're coping with my behavior. Like to be able to model that. All right, great discussion. Great discussion. Well done. Because trauma can affect anybody. There is no, there is no, you can't say that no one is going to experience it, because we all experience different things and at different stages in our life. Were you the kid that threw themselves down, yelling and screaming?
Could I quickly
Yes,
say,
Amy?
there's also work-related traumas, isn't there?
Yes, yes. And sometimes they can be worse than school-related trauma. And I think everybody that went to school has got some sort of school-related trauma because of the
100%.
nature of the beast. Yes, Amy?
Like, let's say someone had a fall or an injury or something, they probably wouldn't want to go back to work.
Yeah, especially if the rest of the workplace ignored them or went, oh, you'll be right, don't worry about it, you know, you've only broken a bone in your foot and you have to be in a moon boot for 6 weeks. You know, if we respond in a traumatic way when we don't really get the response that we're looking for as well, and it might make our trauma even more.
Then you feel
than what it is.
dismissed.
Yeah, absolutely feel dismissed. And that doesn't make us happy in our trauma.
So
Does
being
it?
neglected causes trauma, kind of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well done. Well done. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And not being taken seriously.
Sorry, and the big one is vicarious trauma, like because I'm in the counseling sector. So dealing with clients, obviously you take on their emotions as well. That's a big one.
Absolutely. So how do we fix that?
By self-care, wellness, and also having to see therapists ourselves as well.
Excellent. And don't forget to debrief.
Debriefing is very important with the supervisors.
Yes, absolutely. And because sometimes just offloading it onto our supervisors makes us feel better about what happened and how we're coping with that. So do that. That's what they're there for. If they're classed as a supervisor, they have to do a lot of training in that space to be able to help us with vicarious trauma. And it can happen without you actually, I'll just let these other people in. It can happen without you really knowing that it's happened. Sometimes it can sneak up on you before you know it, and you go, oh, I've been thinking about that client and their situation far too much. It's starting to interfere with my sleep or my concentration. So you become aware of that, and that's where your self-care can come into it. So let's have a look at these. Trauma is caused by, and I think you guys have got a better list. So that's what I mean about students helping students. Amazing. So trauma is caused by an event a person finds very painful and highly distressing. So I feel like that sometimes when I get in my car and go to work and think, why are you stopping at a roundabout? You know, but other people can handle that sort of thing better than some others. So trauma is different for different people. So survivors of criminal assaults, absolutely. High-risk occupational groups. Dentists are one of the most hated professions, and they have a very high rate of dropout and mental health issues because we don't like them. How about that? What other high-risk occupational groups might there be? School teachers, I go, oh, we don't like them. No, we don't like them. I suppose trainers fit into that too.
Police.
The police now, yes, we're supposed to like them, but sometimes we don't. Absolutely.
Nurses.
Amy?
Nurses.
Nurses, oh yes, they can be targeted. Yeah, and they are in a very high risk occupational groups. Anyone that deals with mental health is in a high risk occupational group. All right. So your police, your nurses, your doctors, your workers in mental health and domestic violence. Survivors of domestic family violence. It just doesn't go away. It sort of sits with you for quite some time. Yep. Survivors of intergenerational trauma. Now, let's go even deeper still. Now, let's also have a look at natural disasters. They can also be a cause of trauma. We might only go through them once in a lifetime, but they can be extremely traumatic for us. If you've ever had your house flooded or your house burned down, they are very traumatic events. They might only happen once in your life, hopefully. It's not necessarily the case, though, but they can have significant impact on your resilience and your ability to be able to cope. I know in Bundaberg, when we had all the floods many moons ago now, people would start to panic and start buying things excessively if we started to get heavy rains around the time that we flooded. So it does cause trauma. So don't ever think that a natural disaster doesn't have a lasting effect. All right.
There's one you didn't put there. I think it's quite important. Speaking of like war-torn families, like war-torn countries. So like, let's say you have asylum seekers within the country. So I think that one is a pretty good one there.
Absolutely. And we only have to turn on the news to know that, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. We only have to turn on.
I'd also like to add, COVID was like a worldwide trauma.
Good work. Good work. And we'll talk about that too. Yes, absolutely. We've never been through lockdowns like that all over the world. That hasn't been something that we've experienced. So it was one of those things that nobody knew how to deal with that. And we're probably just very lucky that we actually survived it. Yeah, well done. Good work. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to see some great answers in these questions. All right, excellent. All right. So research suggests that 75% of Australians may experience a traumatic event at some time in their lives. That's 2020. Now, this is a really good reference site, AIHW. Look them up. And I want you to watch this video on the statistics from there. Sorry, I'll leave that there. All right, so I would like you to watch that when you can. And the last slide before we think about our breakout rooms will be what is trauma, harmful or life-threatening. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment with that. But before I do, I want you to also take note of this slide, and I want you to watch that YouTube. It is also in your Learner's Guide on page 6, and they usually have links, barcodes that you can go to for that. All right. Now, I dare say through that, have I let everybody in? Yes. You will understand what your breakout room is going to be. So bear with me. I'm going to bring that up. And we're going to shoot off to the breakout rooms and answer one of our questions. All right. So we're in CHCMHS007. It is the first of 3. And I'm just going to bring that over here. We have our question. So in your breakout rooms, I'm going to get you to brainstorm what are the differences between trauma and complex trauma. So I was going to give you 10 minutes, but I reckon you'll nut this out a lot quicker. So I'll see how you're going with that. But what are the differences between them? I'll just let Natalie in. So the differences between trauma and complex trauma. All right, so I'll take that off the screen now and stop sharing. I'm going to stop the recording.
And a complex trauma is a long-term effect.
Yes, it
You know,
can.
a difficult
Yep.
escape and multiple traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that the difference between the two now, that one is multiple times. So you go to school, and every time you go to school, every day without fail, that kid comes up to you and says something to you that upsets your whole day. Or you go to work and there's one person at work, as soon as they open their mouth, you just want to shudder. So there's all sorts of things that can happen to us when we've got a lot of trauma in the workplace, as well as maybe at home. How do you reckon we cope with too much trauma in too many domains?
Not well.
It's exactly right. We don't. As humans, our window of tolerance will just be over. Our cup will be overflowing. We won't have any tolerance left to be able to, if the next thing comes along that upsets us or we find traumatic, we're probably going to fall over, crawl up into a hole, and just retract from the world. So you've got to remember that when we're younger, our brains aren't formed properly, so we perceive things differently than what we do when we're human. We're all human. When we're older, when we're adults. So look back into your past and look at something that you thought was traumatic in your childhood, and then what do you think about it as an adult? Is it still as traumatic as what you thought it was? So we can have different perspectives on what trauma is like as a child to what trauma is like as an adult. Remembering we're 25 before our brains are formed properly, and we have some sort of emotional intelligence kicking in. Though sometimes that doesn't necessarily work either. Amy, would you like to say something there?
I think you also have to play like what we thought as a child that was traumatic. It may have been very small and not really that traumatic as what you experience as an adult. For example, a child may have thought like a spider landing on them was probably traumatic or something. But something so small, but they still see it as something big,
Absolutely. And do we take that into later life, that fear?
Of course, but also you can't use that as an excuse to discount very, very hard stuff that you have been through as a child.
Absolutely.
And pretend it's small so you don't have to deal with it.
Good work. Good work. So you've got to keep that balance. That balance is very important. Well done. What about room 4 before we head off on a break? What did room 4 talk about?
Well, we really need to talk about much, but we sort of everyone just sort of pretty much explain what trauma is and complex trauma. I think that we sort of got the difference between one and the other, but I don't think we talked about it a little bit more than that, but we will do it next time.
Good work. Good work. It's about knowing the difference.
Yeah.
And even with trauma, there was acute, chronic. So you can always break things down. And if you wanted to research trauma, you would come up with so many deeper and meaningful things about trauma and post-traumatic stress syndrome.
You'd also face a lot of oversaturation in the research and information. So it's hard to really pinpoint what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's more research being done. So sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it may not be a good thing because we don't get to the things that really are important. We're skimming over a lot of information, which makes it difficult. Yeah. So think about that when you're working with young people, because that's primarily what we will be doing. And just some of their behaviors that can happen from trauma. So before we go on our break, can anybody tell me what sort of behavior could be associated with a traumatic response?
Hostile. If someone's been through a traumatic event, they don't really want to be around anyone. They just want to isolate
Absolutely.
themselves. Or sometimes you can see from like their physical appearance, they fidget a lot, or like they jump if they hear a loud noise or something.
Good work. Good work.
Lashing out, hitting,
Sorry?
lashing out, hitting, verbal, any type
Absolutely.
of aggressive get away from me.
Yeah. Because trauma makes us feel unsafe. And when we feel unsafe, we need to protect ourselves.
Mm.
So it's just a fight response in some people. And that can be helped with time and strategies, but we need to be given those strategies. It doesn't come naturally. We don't just learn to be able to cope with trauma. And I feel if you're still dealing with trauma as an older person, sorry, Christine, yeah?
Sorry, a fragmented sense of self-worth, not feeling worthy of yourself.
Absolutely. And trauma can do that. Trauma can do that. And if it's complex trauma, well, it's like it's cemented in there, and it's very hard to shift. Very
Be
hard to shift.
shy too.
Sorry?
Be very shy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Withdrawn. Emma, what do you think?
I was gonna say, like, they might freeze up or just throw complete panic attacks or scream very unpredictably.
Absolutely. We do
On
all
the
sorts of things
opposite
when
side.
we're frightened.
On the opposite side of that, they can go completely non-verbal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Sophie, did you want to say something in that space?
Yeah, like similar disconnect, no emotion, being shut down.
Yeah, yeah. And would you say that is a coping mechanism for them?
Yeah.
Could be.
You can also have the opposite flip of that, where they become a people pleaser, hoping
Good
to get
work.
appraisal from people that are in a safe environment, making sure that they're going to stay safe.
Got to keep everybody happy. Everybody has to be happy. Can't cope if everybody's not happy. There'll be trouble if they're not. Amy?
I think there's also one where like what's it called? Where they blame themselves for the trauma that happened to them, or they blame everyone else around them for the trauma that was caused to them.
Absolutely.
They're trying to like find a way to release it to whoever or to themselves.
Yes.
To kind of
yes.
just numb the fact that it happened. I either blame myself or I blame someone else for it.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. That is a very human response, isn't it? Hey, we don't tend to self-reflect, but in this profession, they make us self-reflect. So maybe we should do that in our own personal lives too, about what has been traumatic for us, and what we believe about those circumstances, and just how have we kept that going, or kept that belief that we're not good enough, or whatever it is that we associate with that trauma. Sometimes we really need to dissect it and put it in the places that it needs to be, and stop carrying it on our shoulders everywhere. So we have to be really careful with how we deal with trauma. And sometimes as young people, if our trauma is not dealt with, we will take that into being an adult and still have those issues and concerns that have never been dealt with. So it makes us a little bit unstable as adults, as it made us unstable as a young person. Yeah, great discussion, guys. Well done. So
Can affect your sleep as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's one of the first things that goes besides defaulting to what we think about ourselves or others. Defaulting to, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I'm too sad. I'm too upset. I'm too depressed to eat. The other with physical health just goes down the tube with that. I can't get motivated to do anything to help myself because I am too traumatized by what has happened and me trying to deal with it. So there's a lot of things that come into play, and the interrelationship between trauma and what we believe, our beliefs and our worldviews, can be distorted because of that trauma. So we really need to make sure that we think about how we're dealing with that trauma if we've got it. Because if we're going to start working with young people, and if you're in residential homes, you know that they have had trauma and they have had complex trauma. It is not just a trauma. You've seen an accident. It is full on complex trauma that we will be dealing with them. Now, excuse me, as support workers, you are not counsellors. So you are not social workers, you're not psychologists. You need to get those people or your clients the support that they need with what they're dealing with. And a lot of young people will not talk about their trauma because they don't quite understand it. They don't know why it happened, and they can't quite put it into words what they feel. So it makes it hard for them to discuss something that they don't quite understand. So that makes it difficult. But look at your self-reflection. Make sure that you think about what has happened to you, what you find traumatic, or have you got complex trauma there that you need to deal with? And have you ever dealt with it? Or did you just brush it under the carpet? I'll be right. Yep, away we go. So remember, if you're dealing with people, have you dealt with your trauma properly? Very important, because trauma can stop us doing what we want to and living the best lives that we can. So we need to make sure that we're on top of what has happened to us as
it can also affect how we respond to any situation in our entire life.
Yes, absolutely. So a young person that has been abused and you run up to them will have a response that you didn't think would happen, but because you've run up to them and frightened the living daylights out of them, they will probably go into a fight mode or a flight. They will run off or they'll freeze. So very important that we understand those things. All right, we are going to go on a break. I want you to make sure that you've got water, that you drink water, or you have something to eat or drink in the whole 10 minutes and get indigestion from that. But whatever you need to do, I want you to move away from your computers, all right? Stretch your backs. You've been sitting, most of us hunch over when we're at the computer. We do not sit up straight because we just don't as humans. So we need to get our gluteus maximus into some sort of other order than what it is at the moment. All right, so I am just, oh, Kristen, sorry. Oh, I just let Kristen in and say, all right, we're going on a break now. Okay, sorry about that, Kristen. I only just saw you there. So I'm going to stop the recording now. So welcome back, everyone. I hope that you have hydrated and you're ready for the next few hours that we've got to go in our new unit, which is CHCMHS007. So we've been talking about trauma and complex trauma, and we broke out to the breakout rooms with that very question and came back with some brilliant information. So well done, everyone. I'm going to share with you the rest of the slides from our unit. All right, so we looked at trauma. There's a video there that you can watch for that particular one. So have a look at our statistics. Just let Natalie in. So 13% or 2.4 million Australians are experiencing high or very high psychological distress. And that was in 2017 and 2018. There was an increase from 14 to 15, which was 11.7. So you can see how it can what it would be now. So we're in 24 and we've had COVID. So you can imagine the next time the Bureau of Statistics do that sort of a survey, it will be a lot higher than what it is. So there's an increase in psychological distress of 55 to 64-year-old women, from 12.3% in 14-15 to 16.9% in 17-18. Can you imagine what they are now? You would be able to find out some of those statistics, but it may not be Australia-wide. It might be more a state thing. But that's pretty harrowing. Now let's have a look at the COVID lockdown. 1 in 5 Australians reported feeling depressed or anxious most or all of the time throughout that whole ordeal. Every day waking up with that fear of something. 23% of Australians reported financial stress during this time. Well, everything was shut down. Of course we did. Most of us had to use our holidays, and if we didn't have holidays, well, that was just bad luck. The government came in with some financial help, but I really don't think it was enough, and we didn't do a very good job of it, but we've been through it now, so if it happens again, we need to know what we need to do. We were definitely not prepared as a country for that. 44% of Victorians responses reporting feeling depressed or anxious most of the time, some of the time, compared with 40% nationally. Why do we think the Victorians had such a hard time?
Because we got screwed. We were in lockdown for a year nearly.
Yeah, sort of, in a figure of speech. Absolutely. Totally agree. And what have we got? From April to June 2022, both male and females across all age groups reported lower mental distress levels compared to the same period in 2021. So that's...
go to...
Yeah, sorry, Natalie.
Thank you. And apologies.
Sorry, Natalie, did you want to speak?
No, sorry. I was just mucking around trying to get the speakers to work. I got it going. Sorry.
Okay, good job. No worries. All right. So we had a lot of problems with that, and there is a mental health impact of COVID-19. The AIHW that I've told you to have a look at. Please look at that. All right. This little activity is about the effects of COVID lockdown, and we were going to do it in pairs and how it impacted. Has anybody got a story that they could tell in that space about their experience with COVID lockdown?
It was depressing, very depressing. I could say for the majority of the time, having to sit down in one place and not do anything, it has a toll on people, like, because you're so used to going to work, but then this big thing happens, changing the whole dynamic. It really like has a toll on people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I have experienced a different way because I actually I was working all the way. My job is in a supermarket, so we were doing online, and yeah, my team was very distressed, and we had a lot of I don't know if everyone remember, I'm pretty sure they do, when there was that stressing toilet paper issues that everyone have to buy, and I found a lot of older people that they couldn't rush it quick enough to actually buy the stuff. So I had a lot of older people actually in tears that period.
Yes, absolutely.
My sister had blood clots in the UK, and we're in WA, and we weren't allowed to leave to go back. Otherwise, we couldn't come back into the country.
Yes.
We were in the worst lockdown ever with no COVID, and we couldn't leave at all. It was so traumatic.
Absolutely. Taya, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was working aged care at the time, like on the later end of when it was still hitting and new waves and stuff like that. And just the amount of overall depression in people that I was giving my services to who couldn't visit their families, who couldn't even go shopping. I had to do it for them. And there were all these protocols for we weren't allowed inside COVID houses unless we were previously told they had it. So if we showed up and they had COVID, we had to leave, and then they had to miss out on their service, and we were the only person they saw all week. And then if we were allowed in and they told us they had COVID, we'd be wearing full PPE from head to toe, basically like a bodysuit. So their very little human interaction was with this weird plastic covered person. And it was just generally very depressing for us to not be able to give them the service they wanted, needed, deserved. And it was definitely very depressing for them.
Good work. Well said. Kirsten?
Okay.
Well, I live in Tasmania, so I worked the whole time because I worked in hospitality at the time. We locked our borders, so we just sort of went on life as normal, most of us. But however, my brother had just moved to Melbourne just a month before COVID happened, and obviously strict, tight lockdowns. So it was a year and a half or 2 years before we actually got to see each other again. So that was a very emotional time when he came back to the state and surprised me. So yeah, that was probably the hardest thing, not being able to be with him.
Yeah, the family connections. Crystal?
Yeah, no, just adding to that, I know there's so much, and we all went through the pandemic. It was hard, but I think the financial stress that everyone went through, obviously not, it's because nobody was planned and we didn't have the saving. I mean, whether we had the savings or not, but I had just come to Australia, actually. I was like, I had been here. I had just done my farm work and I was ready to get my second year for my visa. And I was like here, ready to find work. And then all of a sudden, straight into lockdown. And I think the most stressful part was not like being able to work, but then like, you're able to work, like, hey, I can do whatever you want, but not having the opportunity,
Absolutely.
Like I'm like every day I'm sitting, I'm like, okay, I can work, I can do something, but I'm being told I can't. And that was like the most disturbing. Well, not actually the most, but to everyone, it's just so stressful because
absolutely,
and when you think of the finance, like how we need money, then you just think now that we're out of the pandemic, now it just changes our perspective. So, anyway.
Got out of one frying pan into the other with our interest rates. Amy, Amy, did you have something to say there?
I think it was also scary, like seeing family members get put into the ICU and you don't know how they're going because they wouldn't tell you, or you would later find out they passed away from COVID. So it was like a ticking time bomb waiting for a response. I felt especially for the nurses because they were working more closer to the patients. And it was like watching on the news every day, you hear the news of like patients or nurses dying. It was like, you don't know if that was your own family member. So it was like very scary situation for everyone.
Absolutely. And that was all around the world as well. It wasn't just Australia. So Kirsten, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I live in Darwin, so much the same as the other Kirsten. Very privileged to not be hugely impacted directly, as in we had 2 lockdowns of about a week long. So I think one was 2 weeks and one was a week. But the flip side of that, although our lives weren't hugely impacted, the impact was the fact that we couldn't get out of the state, or sorry, the territory, to go and see family. So we felt stuck. And working with young people, the feedback that they gave me was, they were distressed because they wanted to see aunts, uncles, grandparents. They were worried
Absolutely.
about them. It had been a
Yes.
long time since they'd seen them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think not being able to see our families distresses us more than a lot of other things. Taya, did you want to say something there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that another different experience I had with the COVID stuff is my education. When it first hit, it was 2019 on the tail end. The only time I was allowed to go into school was to go and do my HSC exam. Now, I'd done my prelim exams in the exact same setting the year before, and just the vast amount of like space they'd put between us, it made us feel all really disconnected. And prior to taking that exam, we had spent, since it hit, the rest of the school year of our senior year studying online in comparison to going to school every day. It was a very big adjustment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it made us more resilient to online training because we didn't have a choice. If we wanted to connect, it had to be online. Yeah, yeah. Well done. Great discussion. Has anybody else got their hands up?
I didn't have
Good
my
on you,
hand,
Emma.
but during our lockdown, because I lived in such a remote part of Australia before I moved to the Northern Territory, our area was just cut off and we could travel around the area. Like I was living 12 hours north of Cairns and they literally just cut the top of the Cape off and I went up to the we all just took holidays and traveled around the Cape because there was no tourists.
Yep. Yep. Amy, you've got something to say with that?
Yeah, speaking of Taya's point, like I was also at the point of having HSC. It was so difficult having to do it online because we were so used to like being in a classroom setting, you know, sitting down, talking to the teacher face to face, but now we're having to do it online and sometimes there was like connection issues. So sometimes you'd be stressing even more because you're like, bruh, I have a question to ask, but like the teacher's not responding. So how am I gonna like be able to communicate with the teacher or other students? And as she said, like we only had to go in when we were doing the exam and they spaced us out, which made it so awkward and so isolated. So
Yeah, we certainly did a lot of adjusting in that time. Kirsten, have you got something to say about that?
Yeah, so Vicky, what you said about learning online before. So I worked for a big company at the time and they would send us to Melbourne or Sydney to do our training and things like that. So we had to all convert to online training and I hated it because sitting in front of a laptop for hours on end, like I did multiple 8 or 9 hour training days in front of a laptop and my eyes would start to just like I couldn't handle looking at the screen for that long and like you said, your back, your posture, things like that. But also other people like missed out on opportunities that we got to have, like flying interstate, staying in a hotel, getting all these like luxury things with our training. And then all of a sudden it goes online and it's like I don't even want to do it anymore. Like
Absolutely. And then the organizations go, gee, that was really cost effective, wasn't it?
Yep. Yep. And then they just stay online because they save all the money. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Good point. Natalie?
Yeah, I work in the healthcare industry. I'm actually from a dental department, but I was working in the public industry when I was doing it. So they actually pulled us all into the fever clinic. So I got a lot of aggressive people. They would be spitting at us. They'll be abusing at us. So for the healthcare workers, there was a lot of tensions. Like we started playing games just to try and keep morale up. But it was very, very stressful under the entire healthcare possession. It was heartbreaking really to see nice little people rocking up and then full on throwing food and vegetables at us because we were taking so long trying to do the fever clinic correctly.
Trauma response. Hey. And I think we all had a little bit at some stage or other. Right. Anybody else like to say anything about that before we move on? Good discussion, guys. Absolutely loved it. Any more?
I think it's because like everyone was just so stressed out and annoyed with the situation. I mean, being cooped up in a house or in the same place for hours, it can make a person go crazy. So
absolutely, it can. It can, or it can make us not want to go out. And then we don't want to go to the supermarket. We've learned how to adjust without going out into public, but then we lose that social connection. And we all know that we need that social connection as humans.
It definitely had long-lasting withdrawing social effects on the entirety of the world.
There's been a lot of changes with it, hey, and we've had to adjust to those changes. My experience with COVID was, I'm on 5 acres. I absolutely loved the no traffic, the serenity of nothing's going on. It was, to me, like a breath of fresh air, believe it or not. So I looked at it and went, I don't have to work. I love that. Don't have the money to do anything else, but I can't go out. Love that. So I looked at the other side of it where I found the benefits to it. But there you go. Some people are weird, aren't they? Okay. All right, let's have a look at this. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it can happen to us at any time, really, can't it? You don't have to be young for you to have post-trauma in things. I look at some of the families, and I feel that there will always be post-traumatic stress within that family. It's something that won't shift. So traumatic events, actual or threatened death, or serious injury, or witnessing human deprivation, and looking at the strong impact on a person's mental health and well-being. So that continuous traumatic events will overcome us eventually and stop us from doing what we would like to do. So post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental disorder that individuals might experience after experiencing traumatic events. And I look at our picture and I go, well, you can't witness someone getting blown up and not having a response to it that would be post-traumatic stress eventually. You just can't. So PTSD can have negative consequences for a person's health and well-being. It's how we deal with it. Have we spoken about it? Have we sought help? Do we do self-care? Because we know we have PTSD. So we can't really look at everybody else needs to help us. We need to look at ourselves and go, I need to help me if I want to help others. So I need to make sure that I've got my self-care in order. It can affect anyone, but there is help available, and yes, but you've got to make that effort to have a look at that and see what that is. There's also a documentary, it goes for 30 minutes on I Was Only 19, and that talks a lot about post-traumatic stress. Now, if you look around the world at some of the wars that are happening at the moment, you can relate to the people that have got post-traumatic stress syndrome. All right, let's have a look at interpersonal violence. So the cycle of violence. Now, they've realized that there is a cycle, and there's a calm phase where everything's okay, and we tend to gravitate to those and remember that. Then there's tension building. Then there could be violence. And then there could be that honeymoon phase where we've made up and it's calm for a little while until the tension rises and the violence continues. So we've put it into a cycle of violence. So if we have a look at these interpersonal issues of violence, we've got domestic family violence. Prolonged exposure in adults and children can result in trauma and complex trauma, or complex PTSD, because it's happened multiple times. The cycle of violence is a pattern of abusive behavior involving power and control. Now, that's a big deal too. If you have a look at power and control, we've got power and control wheels and what happens within that. So that's a rabbit hole that you can go down. So what are some of the symptoms of this interpersonal violence that we can experience? Anxiety, hypervigilance, outbursts of anger, flashbacks, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and usually they're negative, depression. So you can see how the things that we feel when violence is happening within our lives or to someone that we love, we feel those emotions. So if you're in it, you feel those emotions, and you may feel those emotions at different levels every day. So our human rights are being violated when we are abused and physically hurt. So let's have a look at domestic family violence, the interpersonal violence within our homes. And as you can see from the picture, it doesn't really matter about what your home looks like. It does not really matter what your home looks like. A protective home environment is a safe place where children are loved, nurtured, and provided for. Now, not every home looks like that, do they? So an unsafe environment might lead to feelings of anxiety, loss of trust, financial insecurity, loss of personal identity, loss of self-control, where we might take up binge eating, or we might take up substance abuse, or we may take up not eating at all. So our unsafe environment has interpersonal relationships with other things that connect with it. So it can become highly volatile. And if you look at some of those effects, our gut is affected, our physical health is affected, our well-being is affected, our mental health is affected by the interpersonal violence within homes. Okay. So I want you to watch this video in your own time, which is experience a traumatic event can affect the person's whole being and can have severe and lifelong impacts on mental and physical health. Absolutely it can. And if you found that you haven't dealt with something that was traumatic in your life, I want you to think about what you can do to help you with that, because you'll have to think about it when you start working with clients. Okay, now, so we've talked about trauma and we've talked about complex trauma. Let's have a look at childhood trauma and the brain. I want you to watch this video. It is 5 minutes, 10 seconds, and it is a wealth of information. So please have a look at that. You'll also find in your learner's guide that there is also these particular videos and recordings that you need to get on to and have a look. So they're all going to help you with answering your questions and understanding what actually happens to us. So we know that we can have trauma and our response can be depression or anxiety or hypervigilance. Is there any other effects that might happen when we are experiencing trauma or complex trauma?
Behavioral issues.
Excellent, well done. It always comes out in our behavior, always, no matter how old we are. Yeah. Any other effects that you can think of?
Looking for, self-medication, basically.
Good work.
So substance abuse.
Yep. Excellent. We're trying to hide or disassociate with the trauma by using something else traumatic to try and fix it, which usually does not help. Yes, Dwayne.
I was just going to say someone could feel like distant or withdrawn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they do. And they absolutely do. That's why they don't seek help. And then it becomes bigger than their lives. Amy, what did you have to say about that?
Sleeping patterns and eating habits may change. So
Absolutely.
if you're
Absolutely.
sleeping
Good.
regularly might change too. You may not sleep at night and decide to sleep during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a person who eats a lot, you might start eating less.
Good work. Yeah. So when we see a complete change in someone, we've got to sort of think, oh, something's happening with them. You know, and it could be that they have had a flashback of something that happened to them as a child. So it can come back to us later if we do not deal with it at the time. And sometimes we don't know that we have to deal with it because we thought it was normal.
Even if you do deal with it, you can still get flashbacks.
Absolutely. And sometimes even dealing with it brings it back because you're talking about it, you're in that space. So that can also be traumatic. So even when we go to counseling or we speak to someone about our issues, that can also give us feelings of shame, remorse, guilt, and all sorts of things we can feel with that. So we have to be very careful when we're dealing with people that have complex trauma or any sort of trauma for that matter. Kirsten?
I was going to say also there can be anger and confusion because people can't connect. They don't understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So it presents as anger and confusion, frustration.
Absolutely. And when we can't name how we feel, we've got to behave it. So we become that angry person. Hey, when we don't deal with our trauma. Amy, what would you like to say in that space?
Like I said before, the blame game, they blame everyone else behind, like around them, just so they can have a bit of comfort because they may not want to think about it in the way that they think about it. So they think it's easier to blame everyone else for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't need to deal with it if I blame somebody else for it, do I? I can walk away from that. No, that's somebody else's problem or fault or responsibility. And we tend to not self-reflect.
And that causes frictions in families and relationships.
Absolutely.
Of they blame the person who's trying to support them and be there for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great discussion. Well done.
Sadness and exhaustion can happen too.
Absolutely. You don't sleep. If we don't sleep properly or we don't get enough sleep, we are basically looked at as being drunk. So there you go. It if trauma is stopping you from sleeping, your whole life in all the domains are going to be affected. Very, very important. And as I say, as workers, support workers, you need your sleep, and it needs to be solid sleep. It can't be broken sleep. So let's have a look at the effects on development of a child who has experienced trauma or complex trauma. So complex trauma in childhood can affect all aspects of development and can include now health conditions, rashes, skin rashes, difficulty breathing. There's things that can be brought up from trauma as far as our health goes. Our learning and our ability to understand, our cognition, how we relate to issues can be impacted by trauma. Working in sexual assault, I know that sexualized behaviors can happen in young children and then continue throughout their lives. So they need to be aware of that so that they don't have risky behavior. So behavioral issues where they think violence is the only way that you can deal with things. Swearing and making yourself heard is the only way that you got heard. Attachment and relationship issues. It might be that if we do not deal with our trauma, it affects our relationships and our ability to attach to people, relationship-wise, socially, family, friendships, etc. We have difficulty doing that because of how we feel with that trauma. Mental health issues, anxiety and depression will come into it. They're usually some of the first things that we actually notice. But if we really self-reflected, we should have noticed a lot sooner than when we notice anxiety and depression. All right, and coping mechanisms. How do we cope? As I said earlier on, some things are good coping mechanisms, other things are bad coping mechanisms. All right, you need to know the difference between the two. So self-concept, what do you believe about you? What is your self-talk? What is one of your go-to lines that you will use if you do something wrong? And how does that affect you if you keep saying it? Gee, I'm useless at that. I wish I could be better at that, but I'm so useless at that. I'm just useless at that. I just can't do it. If you thought about what you were saying and you said to yourself, gee, I'm not good at this, so I'm going to get better. I'm going to figure out how to do that because I want to learn how to do that. I am going to be able to do this. Can you see how the two different ways of looking at something, the same thing, can have different effects on it? So our coping mechanisms are very, very important, and our self-talk, regardless of who we are, is very important. We're going to work with young kids that their self-talk is demoralizing, it's destructive, it will never give them the self-confidence that they need. So we need to change that. But we need to practice that to change it, because mindfulness is not something that, oh, I am now mindful. It's something that you have to practice. It's like self-care. We have to practice it, or it just does not work. All right, so let's have a look at coping mechanisms. And they can become your normal. And I go, they're not normal, some of them, but they're your normal to cope with what you need to cope with. So our stress responses might be that flight where we take off, we just run. The support worker stops that car, the car stops, we're out that door and we're gone. It might be the fight response, where that young person grabs the steering wheel from you, all right? It could be the freeze response, where they just melt. They're unable to cope, their cup is overflowing, they cannot or want to do anything else, they just completely freeze. Then you've got your fawn, and we spoke about this earlier on too. You're over-accommodate. You are a pleaser and an overachiever sometimes. You just accommodate. Here comes that person. I'm going to do whatever they want me to do in this instant because I'm not strong enough or have enough self-respect for myself to stop them from doing whatever they do. So we go into what they call a fawn response. We can also identify as a victim. And in most instances, we are a victim. But then we don't want to live with being a victim, because that does not help our self-esteem. We can also deny it. It never happened, didn't happen, don't want to know about it. A lot of parents do this when there's a lot of trauma. Just completely deny it. Never actually happened. And if I do that, I won't have to think about it, so I blocked it out, which comes to repressing your memories. Being emotionally detached. I can't trust anymore because of the trauma that I've experienced. So every relationship that I get into, I just destroy it because I can't trust anymore. probably because I have not dealt with the emotions and my responses to behaviors. So being that emotionally detached happens a lot, especially with children. That withdrawal, we've spoken about that. Rationalizing is something that we haven't sort of spoken about before, is they try to make sense of it. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense. No matter what we do, it just will not make sense. All right. Now, you stay in these stress responses for too long, what do you think will happen to you in each one of those? You'll end up having one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. You will end up with so many stress responses that your body will not be able to cope. Your body will eventually shut down. You'll get very sick, because when we have these responses and we have bad coping mechanisms, our body reacts to that, and it will get ill. Our body will get sick. So the long-term effects of trauma, if not treated, and I stress, if it's not treated and you're still experiencing these things, do something about it. It's very important. Okay. A need to control. Well, what has happened has happened. We can't control it anymore because it has happened. And it was probably something that was out of our control. That's usually what's more traumatic, is that we couldn't do anything about it. So we have coping mechanisms that could lead to addictive behaviors. And they could not only be alcohol and other drugs, that can also be risky behaviors. So we might decide we're going to block everything out and we're just going to become that person that just works, or they just exercise to remove them from that trauma. That makes them feel a little bit better. They feel more in control when they're doing that. We can also, self-harm comes into it a lot. We despise the situation. We are so disassociated from it. We have become numb. We need to feel something. So sometimes we can go down that self-harm path. We can think about leaving Earth and not being here because we just can't seem to find the coping mechanisms to help us through our trauma. And sometimes to help us through our trauma, we need somebody else. We can't do it ourselves. Disordered eating, binge eating, not eating at all, or a need to control others because you couldn't control that situation. So now you need to have full control so that it doesn't happen again, or you perceive that having full control means it won't happen again. And crisis issues that come from long-term effects of trauma is your mental health, what you're thinking about. Incarceration, so in other words, that addictive behavior has got you locked up. So here's the aftermath of trying to control something with a bad coping mechanism has then led to a crisis situation where you are now incarcerated and you are in jail for a period of time. Homelessness. Now that happens more than what you think with people with trauma. Relationship breakdowns we've talked about, and maybe unemployment, because they get to work, the first person that they encounter is that bully, and they have a fight reaction, and there you go, that's their response. They're now unemployed because of that, because of not being able to cope with somebody else's behaviors. So there's lots of things that can happen to us. So what are some of the effects of trauma? Research resources in pairs. We're not doing this, but I want you to have a look at page 15 of your learner guide and use your phone to access some of these resources. You have. Now, when you're dealing with your people in your role plays, I want you to remember this slide. The National Children's Traumatic Stress Network, WA's Child Development and Trauma Guide, Blue Knot Foundation, Harvard Health Publishing, and Headspace, which is one word with a little s and a small h. But anyway, these are places that you can refer your clients to. So when you're thinking about, oh, how am I best going to help this person that's in front of me? What do I need to know about them? Oh, they're above 12. Oh, they can go to Headspace. All right, but usually Headspace has got a waiting list, so we might have to look for something else. It might be the hospital first, but their waiting list is a year long. So we have to make sure that we connect them somehow, and sometimes that's not easy to do, not easy at all. But they are resources that you can find all sorts of information out on. This is another YouTube that I'd like you to watch as well. It explains the difference between them. Now, remember, when a C is usually put in, it's usually that complex. So you've got PTSD, but you've got complex PTSD, childhood PTSD, and then you've got your ACEs. Are they different? I want you to have a look at that and figure that out for yourselves. All right. So we've got some key learning. You've got videos to watch there. So I'm going to stop sharing that and now share with you our breakout room before we go on a break. So this will be a short breakout room. It won't be 10 minutes long, but we didn't go through what we were thinking about. I might do the breakout room when we come back. We'll see how we go with this. But we looked at complex trauma and trauma, and I think you guys got everything that is down there. Remember that the complex means multiple events have happened. It's not just one incident, and they can be different traumas. It can go from whatever trauma is there, and when we say complex trauma, it might be a little bit different, but it's still the same, like school bullies, etc. So that's some of the things that we had a look at there. Now, when we have questions that have and side and in it, it means there's two parts to that question. Don't forget the second part. So I want you to have a look at describing the common beliefs and attitudes towards people who experience interpersonal violence. Because some of us might go, oh, you should be able to get over that. No, that's nothing to worry about. And they don't evaluate our feelings and emotions. And that can also be a trigger for us. And how does this impact access to services? So if you've had a bad experience with counselling, for example, it might be that you think they're all the same and none of them can help you because you've been to one. It's like trying one ice cream flavour and going, they're all the same. All right. I am going to stop that sharing in a moment and turn the sharing off. So, common beliefs and attitudes towards people who experience interpersonal violence, and how does this impact their access to services? So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn off. So we've just been in our breakout room. Can I hear from room 1 about what they experienced and talked about within their room?
Can you please add me to our room?
Yeah, no, we've come out of the rooms now, so we're just going to discuss what was discussed in the rooms.
All right.
So someone from room 1?
Yeah, we spoke about like with the attitude things about like people saying that, oh, it's not that bad what you experienced because this didn't happen, or like the person, like the partner saying, oh, well, you didn't do this, so, or you done this and this is why I done this.
Assumptions, nothing worse.
Yeah. And then we spoke about like with accessing services, maybe not knowing where to go and what services can help. Also like embarrassment about talking about it, or like
people are going to
not wanting
judge
to
me.
speak
I
up.
don't want to tell them stuff because people are going to judge me.
Mhm.
So that sometimes will stop us from doing that. Excellent. What about room 2?
Yep, that's me. I'll go. So we talked about the attitudes towards people. Yeah, not that bad. It's not that bad. Easy to get over it. You're weak. Afraid you get bullied. That's one. Then we had, why don't you just leave if it's that bad? And then we also talked about the services was, being afraid of being judged, because you are talking to someone that potentially you don't know, so it would be confronting. Also the proof, if it's not physical, how do you prove that you are getting emotionally abused and that? So and the fear of going to get help as well.
It can be very fearful.
I'd also like to add to room 2, fear of, like, because a lot of domestic abuse victims have kids. So there could be definite fear of being displaced, being homeless, not knowing what to do with the kids, getting the kids taken away from you.
Yes. And that fear will keep you where you are, constantly in fear. Amy, did you have something to say there before we go into the next room?
Yeah, I was going to talk for my room.
Oh, yeah, good.
I was taking the bullet for my room again.
Good girl.
I
They
just
love
wanted to
that.
say, I just wanted to say, hardship, financial hardship. So some may not be able to afford the services out there. And so they try and think of the best option for them to be able to get services. But also adding to that, they may not want to get service because they're feeling the fear of being judged or being called stupid, or, saying that, as a teenager, you go through it, you just like, it's just another one of your phases, you'll get over it. So, as fear of talking to
Trauma is
someone.
not a phase. Trauma is not a phase. We don't come in and we can sometimes come in and out of trauma, but we don't. It's not a phase.
It's
we're
not
going
something
through.
that goes away. It's something that sticks with you.
That's
So
exactly
they have a
right.
fear that if they're going to tell somebody, that person's not going to listen or reciprocate the same way that they're trying to, like, tell the person, look, I've went through this, but the person's just looking at them like, okay, then, like, just get over it, be tough type of situation.
Or we go home and we go, oh, it was really stressful at work today, and nobody wants to listen to us. Nobody wants to hear how our day was or how stressed we are in that. And so we can't even help ourselves in that space. But then when we work with clients, we shouldn't really be discussing them at home. But what we can discuss at home is how we feel about what happened. So we don't discuss the client, but we feel, I was really challenged today. I felt these feelings with this. So that's a better way of coming at it than, I had a really bad day today. None of my clients would do what they were told, and it was really stressful. And then we had an incident and I had to do all this paperwork and whatnot. Your family end up saying, I don't want to know about it, don't want to hear about it. So it might be better coming from, wow, today was overwhelming. I really have felt quite burned out today. So
Yeah, because it might be seen as complaining as well. That you're just complaining about the situation.
Yeah. And we do look at when we're being negative about something, we do look at as a complaint, don't we? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share what I had recorded, and then I'm going to send you for a break. I'm over that. There we go. All right. So our question was, and it had 2 bits. And remember, if you have questions that have an and in it, or another word that is a joining word, I want you to make sure that you answer both parts of that question, because sometimes we just overlook that. All right, so let's have a look. We were talking about the attitudes and beliefs towards people with who experience trauma, and sometimes we get that compassion fatigue, where we go, you know what, I'm so over your trauma. That can happen. So let's have a look. So various beliefs and attitudes are not limited to, and they are absolutely not. The person made the choice to stay in the situation. It only happened a couple of times, so it's not that bad. Well, we know a couple of times is complex, isn't it? It's not just a one-off. They could leave at any time they want. It's not that hard. It is terribly hard to get out of a violent relationship. It is not easy at all. They were asking for it or worked up the other person. Not an excuse for violence, regardless. You can hit your children if it's not too hard and or you don't leave a mark. Well, you tell me that you're hitting your children, I have to report you. It's as simple as that. Emotional abuse is not as bad as physical or sexual abuse, or isn't abuse at all, because there's no evidence on the person's body. It is hard to try and find evidence of emotional abuse, and it usually comes out in their behaviours. Family violence stays within the family. It's not an outsider's place to interfere. Years ago, maybe. Now, no. Your neighbour will dob you in. Violence is common or expected in certain cultures or demographics. Shouldn't be expected in any culture or demographics, but it is common. Alcohol and drugs were the cause, not the person. Ooh, this one really gets me, because we make a choice to take alcohol or drugs. And if we blame the alcohol or drugs that we had the choice in taking, and then we did something horrible, we're not to blame for that. We're not responsible, because we did not have a reasonable judgment at the time. I get very, very angry with people blaming the drugs or the alcohol for their behaviours. Children who witness violence in the home will grow up to abuse others. Not if they break the cycle, they won't. And it's hard to break the cycle. Be the one that breaks the cycle. That's what I say. Because you will be so empowered by that from experience here. The associated impacts of interpersonal violence and complex trauma, mental health, drug and alcohol addiction, unemployment, homelessness, and attitudes and beliefs can lead to feelings of shame, helplessness, and loss of self-worth in victims, leading them to feeling unworthy of help. So they can feel unworthy of help. They are therefore less likely to be able to access support. So not only do we feel depressed and anxious about our situation, but we also feel unworthy of assistance or support. So that can happen. All right, excellent. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording because we're going on a 10-minute break. Excellent. So we've just come back from our second and last break. We've nearly finished our session for tonight, but I just wanted to show you some of the things that you will be doing within this unit. So I'm going to share my screen again and hope this comes together. All right, let's do Belinda. Now, this sheet that I've got up is called an Individual Care Plan, ICP. You will be filling these out for your clients within the role plays that are there. So you're looking for all the things that you need to fill in. And this is a bit of a cheat sheet here that we've got. So you have to know an address, even if it's made up, it needs to be an address. All right. You need contact details. Look, they may, this is simulated, so they're going to be made up, aren't they? So there's the date that this plan was developed, the people involved with it, the background of information on the client, what is happening with the client. Now, care alerts, what are the risks? What do we need to make sure that we address? All right, and as we keep coming down, let's have a look at some of our domains. So sleep and rest care. So what time are they going to bed? What time do they wake up? What are the aids that they use, if there's any? And I look at that and I go, why haven't they got medication there? Because I think that should be there. Nighttime checks, do they need that? Is that even something that is necessary, depending on the client? Now, I go, if we were doing this on a young person, is nighttime checks a viable, reasonable thing to do? And I go, yes, it would be. Yes, it would be. All right, nighttime pattern. What are they experiencing? What is happening? And what are some of your comments on that? Here we go. Medication. All right, so it's got its own special little section. What are they on? Now, does anybody can tell me what melatonin is?
Something you naturally produce in your body, but not everyone can produce enough, so you take supplements.
Yeah. Good job.
Sleep. It's for sleep.
Excellent. Well done. Good work. Just checking on that, because it is so highly prescribed, you will hear about it. All right. So it might be that you know some of this information and you can fill it in. So I look at these templates and go, don't make up your own, use what's there. Make sure you just about fill in every section that is there. Don't miss things. So if you didn't put anything in the medication at all, I'd go, oh, something's missing from this plan that needs to be put in there. All right. Social and emotional. Remember all the domains that we need to. Yes, Natalie?
Is this for the trauma-informed approaches, the role play section?
Yeah.
So the only thing we need to submit is a suicide safety plan and a recording of your meeting. This is to help us with the actual role play.
Yeah.
So each of the role plays provide us one of these templates. We don't have to fill it out. We just read it so that we've got something to go off, and then we've got to fill out a suicide safety plan.
Good girl. Well done. Yeah. So it is task 3, part A, B, and C. So there's 3 sections to this.
Yeah, I went through all 3, and all 3 of them provide us this template completely filled out.
Yep.
And then it just requests just to submit a video recording of your meeting, so no greater than 15 minutes, as the other ones say, and then a suicide safety plan if needed. So for the first one, Belinda, she will need one. And then for like the next one, it's just a video, and then the last one is just a video. We don't have to fill out these forms.
Good work. But you've got them there, so that they're there, so that you can get the information that you need from them. Yeah. So it's a resource.
That's correct.
Beautiful. Well done. Good. I'm glad you found them. Excellent. That's why I thought I'll bring them up. If you haven't found them, I need to show you what they are.
I worked these out from the last role plays that we've been working on. Hey, I'm learning.
See, new students. See, once you've done one, it just sort of falls into place.
100%, and I passed first go, so it's really easy to do, guys.
Good job. Good job. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. So a lot of the information that is given to you is there. It's just a matter of you reading it, putting it into where you need it to be to make it work for you. Yeah. So you've got to read all those things and have a look at it so you can better understand what is happening with the client. Now, in the real world, someone had to make that form and put that information in. So that might be your job at some stage or other, but for this exercise, it is giving you that information. So you've probably got more information on that than what you would in a case study. So that's pretty good. Has anybody got anything else that they would like to talk about that task 3? You probably have not had a time to actually even consider it at this point in time, because this should be your first week with that unit. All right. So, well done, everyone. Great discussions tonight. That there was some really good learning within that from peers. So that is really good. Now, has anybody else got anything that they would like to talk about on this particular unit before I stop recording and we start talking about some of the other things that are happening within our studies? So how's everybody going? Are you going okay?
Yeah, a little bit overwhelmed for my first day.
Absolutely. We expect that. We expect that. And I think if you said that you weren't, then all the other students would probably go, what the? You know, so.
I'm glad.
Yeah. It's not a bad thing being overwhelmed sometimes. And it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. I've only just started with Hatter, and just trying to get in there to mark your work is a challenge. So I go, and you guys are uploading stuff. Wow, to that platform. So, but with familiarity, we get better at what we do. With practice, we become experts. So it's about putting that effort in. But I always say to my students, start answering the questions. You get 3 chances to be able to get it right. And if you get it wrong, we will tell you what you're missing.
Yes.
So then you can do that. I've never known of another RTO to give you 3 chances. I'm going, that's a blessing. Absolutely use them if you need them.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yeah. But I also go, if you didn't get it right the second time, something's missing. We need to make that connection. And I'll go, if you do not get something right the second time, either email your LSOs or speak to a trainer about it, because you're missing something there if you can't do it. Usually most people get it right the second time because think about this when you re-answer, or what you've uploaded is not what is supposed to be there, or you've uploaded this document twice and it needs to be something else. So there's lots of little things that we do that can make it a little bit harder for us to concentrate on it. Taya, what do you reckon?
At the beginning, this is my first session. I enrolled yesterday, so I don't really, I'm kind of wondering.
Congratulations, Doug. Congratulations.
At the beginning of the session today, you said that you would provide an email that I could get in contact with a support person.
I'll do that. I'll do that right now for you. All right, excellent. Now, with anybody else, you don't have to stay for this next part. We're going to be discussing some of the things that we need to do. Some of my new learners may need an induction of some sort. Entirely up to you guys what you do. But I'm going to stop recording now and wish you a good night to most of you. Brilliant discussions in this session. Absolutely loved it. I love how you are starting to get involved in what you're doing, which is for the greater good of you. So look at training as a personal growth, because otherwise it'll be a hassle. So look at it as we've got to put a different spin on it, because otherwise we get bored and annoyed with it. We don't want to do it. So we've got to put a different spin on it, like this is going to lead me to working on the weekends for $70 an hour. Thank you very much. All right. So always think of the purpose of why you are going to do the job that you're going to do and why you're studying. Yeah. Excellent. All right. So the ones that don't want to stay don't have to. I'm now going, and did I have somebody else?
I just have a quick question. Is this trauma-informed care, is this 3 weeks or 2 weeks?
3 weeks.
Amazing.
So
I
we've
need to
got
hear that.
2 more sessions for that, Natalie.
This was heavy, so I appreciate the extra week.
Yes, and so did I when I looked at it. I went, thank goodness for that.
Yes.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop that recording now and send it to